Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur. As always, it's Matt here, and this week I'm joined by a very special guest. We have Sean Malloy from the Dolph Lundgren podcast, I Must Break This Podcast. Welcome back, Sean.
Hey, thanks for the invite. This is I wish it could be under better circumstances, but I think we are still going to have a fun conversation regardless. So
yeah, no, I think that the idea that we had for this episode, I think we kind of birthed this idea maybe back when I was last on your podcast. I think we talked about Expendables, and I think I had planned to have you on earlier in 2021, and things just got a little bit hectic for me here. But I think that the idea that we have for this podcast, I think it's still going to work out for us for sure.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, Bruce Willis, boy, oh boy, I don't even know where to begin with these productions, but all of these films are interchangeable. I mean, they really are. I mean, they're all interchangeable. The titles are all interchangeable. The characters are just about all the same. These movies are all, for the most part, just, completely disposable. They're put together, I feel like, what is the equivalent of like an assembly line, and then just kind of spit out. So, I mean, you could have picked, I think we talked about quite a few options, but you could have picked that one with Michael Chiklis, 10 Minutes Gone. You could have picked Survive the Night, Survive the Game. What is the other one? Out of Death. I mean, all these titles that don't make any sense. And we would have been having the exact conversation. So
yes. It's funny because this movie, I think there's a scene in this movie where the boat that has, instead of MS for the two-letter state abbreviation, because the movie is shot in Mississippi, instead of having MS, they do have MI, which is Michigan, which is, thinking of assembly line. I know a lot of these are shot in Michigan, even though this one wasn't. So I guess now that they don't make as many cars in Michigan, now they pump out these direct-to-video movies.
Yeah, it's boy. It's funny because I've been saying it for a while, excuse me, but I feel like Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's for the most part, I think he's pretty much retired. I mean, we'll see him pop up in a few, but it's funny. I've long been, kind of disappointed because it's like, man, I'd love to see Jean-Claude pop up in something else again. But I think the big reason why we can pretty much consider him to be essentially retired is because of projects like this. You know what I mean? Like, if this is the state of direct-to-video action cinema, especially for these guys who, let's face it, are old men now, who are over the hill, I feel like, it was wise for Jean-Claude to, kind of step away. And he can afford to step away. I don't know how he was with his money back in the 90s, but, I think he's at a state where he can pretty much afford to step away, rest on his laurels, and be remembered for the hits. Bloodsport, Time Cop, Universal Soldier, all of those. If he was not retired, I think it's safe to say we'd probably be seeing him pop up in junk like this as well. And so, you gotta hand it to Mr. Van Damme. I think that's some artistic integrity, and if you look at a guy like Bruce Willis, I mean, this is a guy, I don't think he really needs to work, but for whatever reason, he is constantly putting these things out. And what's really a shame about it, I think you and I were talking about this, I was texting you. What's really a shame about it is, okay, yeah, a guy like Van Damme, he's going to be remembered for Bloodsport. He's going to be remembered for those big hits. But then you have Bruce Willis. It's almost like he's just crapping on his legacy, and this is the garbage that he's going to be remembered for. And that, I think, is the real tragedy in this whole ordeal.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because one thing, this actually kind of dovetails a bit with, your most recent podcast as of us recording this, where you talked to director of Pups Alone, Alex Merkin, which is, you see a Dolph Lundgren Christmas movie called Pups Alone that's coming out, and you think, boy, this has got to be, just like goofy, silly stuff, and there's almost a sense of like, oh boy, what is Dolph doing with his career? But hearing that podcast when you talk to the director, Alex Merkin, about it, he was like, no, Dolph didn't treat it like that. One of the things we're going to talk about with Bruce Willis is he doesn't like to do his overdubs or his ADR or anything like that. Whereas Lundgren makes sure that like he's like what did he say? He was doing it over Zoom in the studio of another movie that he was shooting. It's like some of these guys just have a little bit more, even if they're doing roles that we would think of as goofy, like they kind of still, I think Lundgren, for example, he's still kind of picking something that he thinks he can have fun with, that he can enjoy, and he's not mailing it in. It's not like just like, here's Dolph sleepwalking through a cartoon movie with dogs with, actors like Danny Trejo doing the voices for it. Yeah, he wants to put in a good performance still.
Oh, definitely. And that's, when we talk about artistic integrity, I feel like that is, there's a guy who, no matter how big, no matter how small the production is, he is going to deliver. And there's a few performances, over the years, I will say, there were paychecks. You look at a film like Shark Lake that Dolph did. That one was, pretty bad. Another one called Forgotten, where, you can tell he's there, for his minimum 6 days worth of work, and then he's checking out. But then, yeah, you get a little film like Pups Alone, which I have not seen yet, but, and I, to be perfectly honest, I'm not expecting it to be this amazing award winner or anything, but, speaking with the director who was so high on it, and and I'm not going to lie, I don't know if you've seen the trailer or not, but if you watch that trailer, Dolph looks to be having a blast. He looks to be having just a ton of fun in this silly little ridiculous movie about talking dogs on Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what is this here? But he seems to be invested for whatever reason. So that's, and that's pretty refreshing to see, especially when, I just got finished watching this film called Precious Cargo, where we're told that Bruce Willis is one of the stars in it, and he's not even in the film for 5 minutes, and that seems to be his MO with all of these movies.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I was looking through Bruce Willis's career on IMDb because I think one of the things that happens with some of these stars, like kind of like you said, like he starts to get remembered for this, right? He gets remembered for doing these kinds of things, and I think the funny thing too is we almost forget, like, or I don't know that we forget, but pre Die Hard, he was this guy who was doing like comedic roles in like Blake Edwards films, and he had Moonlighting, which was he was part romantic, part comedic lead with opposite Sybil Shepherd, and so he does Die Hard, and I think it changes the game completely, right, with action, where suddenly we don't need these big muscle bound guys to do action. It's like, oh, if we can put Bruce Willis in an action film, we can put anybody in an action film. But then also, he still was kind of doing some of those comedic roles through the 90s. At the same time, he's doing these action films that, varying degrees of quality. With some, they were big budget films, but, Striking Distance, some of those were, they're not the best. But he's still kind of doing those, and he's also doing iconic pictures like Pulp Fiction, Fifth Element, 12 Monkeys. It's interesting. It looked like, for me, when I was looking at his career, it seems like 2010 is sort of the point where all of this starts, where he does Red, and he's kind of doing he did a couple big budget films, but it seems like this is where you start to get this DTV stuff. And
let's face it, he's the guy is well past his prime. Which, I mean, look, age is a mother. I mean, can we just say that? I mean, it happens to us all. You know what I mean? And so he's well past his prime. I think even when this change that we're seeing started happening, I don't think he was getting the best roles and the best work was coming his way. I mean, even if you look at a theatrical film like Red, okay, that had 6 times the budget as something like this, but even if you watch something like that, you can tell that he is just a little tired. And it doesn't seem entirely invested, doesn't seem to care anymore. He did that other one directed by Kevin Smith with Tracy Morgan. What was that? Cop Out?
Cop Out. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. I've been meaning to, just because I have Kevin Smith too. It's it intrigues me.
Yeah, well, and in that one as well, I mean, he does have a couple funny moments, but you can tell in that one that he's just going through the motions. And I feel like he's a guy who just kind of lost his edge, lost his fire, and kind of lost his reason and his passion for acting. Because, I mean, look, the guy, I mean, I don't want to mitigate his talents. I mean, the guy is amazing. Obviously, Die Hard is one of the films that he'll be, forever known for. But he did another one back in 1999. It was a bizarre Disney movie called The Kid. Okay. And yes. the only reason I remember this is because it was on Disney Plus and I was watching it with my kids, and you watch it. And I mean, and that came out right around the time of The Sixth Sense, and right after, because I think if I remember right, he had like a production deal with Disney at the time. And so he did that. He did The Kid, he did Armageddon, and he did Sixth Sense. These were all monster hits, not just for Disney, but for Bruce Willis. And you watch all of those films, and he is just, I'm going to use a term that you've used before, Matt, but he is just electric in those movies. And in The Kid in particular, he's funny. He has a few dramatic moments, and you watch it and it's like, man, this is a dude who, it's no wonder this guy was one of the biggest stars of the 90s. I mean, this is amazing. And then you watch these films that he's doing with these dopes over at EFO, and his lids are barely open, you know what I mean? It's so sad. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not going to be, number one, if you're not going to be on set for more than just a couple days, and if you're not really going to be invested, fans, I don't think really care to see it. Why don't you pull a page out of Van Damme's book and just, kind of slowly go off into the distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because I think what it is I think, I mean, what is he, this film, Precious Cargo, that we're about to discuss, I mean, is he in 3 locations? I mean, so he's really in one location, right? It's mostly all at the hotel. His scenes are at this big hotel. And is there another location? Like the
rooftop.
The rooftop, that's right, and that's still in the hotel, right? I mean, it's like, I think that the shootout with the armored car in the garage, is that still in the hotel too? Is that like the hotel garage?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear with all of these films. And I don't know who is picking up a Bruce Willis movie in 2021 and thinking, you know what, I think this has potential to be good. Or better yet, I don't know who is picking up one of these movies and saying, oh, cool, a new Bruce Willis movie, and then afterwards is pissed off that, oh man, he was only in it 5 minutes. Because that's the gimmick, and that's the lie that we're essentially being sold here. But yeah, he's on set for maybe only 2-3 days. I wouldn't be surprised, to be perfectly honest, if it's maybe 1 day. And what they do is they just film those scenes and then kind of sprinkle them throughout the film. This film in particular, they really don't even sprinkle them throughout the film really at all. It's only, a small collection of scenes. But, what I said earlier about how he was just so electric and how he, sucked the air out of the room in the films that he was in these, you almost, I mean, and one, I can't speak to the other films because I haven't seen the other ones, but in this one in particular, you almost forget that he's even in the movie. You know what I mean? You almost forget that he's even a presence. He's even a character. It almost feels completely like his character is tangential to where you could write it out completely. I mean, and I have a few theories as to how something like this even got off the ground, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one, you talk about, Bruce Willis being electric. One of the greatest roles that he did for me in his early career was he did a guest spot on Miami Vice, where he played this mob boss who was abusive towards his wife and just had like this raging, like just this absolute rage in him. And of course you've got, this is juxtaposed with, with Crockett's, smooth, like, kind of laid back demeanor, or, sort of like, intense, but also not like that kind of rage. And one of the things I think about with that episode, of course, is that his character, because he was so like bold in the way he did his scenes, as a bad guy in that episode, his presence is just sort of permeating everything that's happening in the episode. And granted, it's only a 45-minute episode, but like what you just said there about this film, where you have to remind yourself that Bruce Willis is in it. You have to remind yourself that Bruce Willis is the baddie. And it's almost like the characters have to keep propping up his baddie by talking about how bad he is. And I just think of that one scene where he catches this guy, him and Daniel Bernhardt, who we see a lot here at the DTV Connoisseur, who is his hatchet man. They catch this guy who I guess has been feeding Claire Forlani what the jobs are that he's been doing, and there's this understanding that, boy, this guy, he's going to get it. It's going to be really bad. But because Bruce Willis really can't care less that he's there, there isn't any sense of like, even though this guy's going to get it, he is going to die, and he's probably going to die a horrible death that we don't see on screen. There isn't any tension with it because Bruce Willis isn't giving us any tension.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I guess at a time it was fairly novel. Okay, Bruce Willis, wow, he's playing the villain, for a change. He doesn't get to play the villain very often. But I mean, if you look at all of these films that he's done with EFO in the past few years, most of them he's playing the bad guy. And what it is he's playing the bad guy who gets to, I guess, dress fairly nice. We will say, but he's pretty much the bad guy who gets to sit most of the time and, shout orders over the phone or, act threatening over the phone. And that's all done, to give him as little to do as possible. It really is I would say that they're swindling audiences, but I'd like to believe at this point in 2021, now that we've been seeing this, permeate for the past, 7-8 years or so, I'd like to think that audiences are onto it at this point. But in the end, I don't think these movies are made for audiences. These films, these producers who are bankrolling these things, they're pretty much funding them purely off of foreign sales. So once they get those foreign sales, they quickly make the movie and get it in the can and move on. I don't think there's a whole lot of time put into the post-production process. I really don't think the directors or anybody are even sitting back and, looking at the dailies and trying to figure out how to put these things together. It's really one of the dirty aspects of movie making these days.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely for sure. Like, like one of the things that I'll joke sometimes with Ty from Comeuppance Reviews podcast, who he and I, sometimes he and his brother Brett will be guests on here, or I'll be guests on their podcast a lot. But he refers to the term fake Shemp because of, back when in the Three Stooges, when Shemp, I guess, I can't remember what the story was with Shemp, but he left, but he was still under contract or something. Like, they still had to deliver episodes of the show with him, so they put fake guys in and made them look like Shemp.
Okay.
And so that's what the description is for all of the stunt doubles that Bruce Willis uses, is the fake Shemps, because he never does his what is that, the reverse shots. So whenever somebody's talking to him in a scene, those shots that are supposed to be over his shoulder looking at that person, that's not him. It's never him.
No.
He's got a bald guy, a fake Shemp, who's standing there. I mean, you got to think, like in Mississippi, Michigan, or wherever, Louisiana, wherever these films are being shot, that they must just go out and look for as many bald guys as they can and just put them in the same suit that Willis is wearing and just put them, in the background. I mean, I think at the end of the movie, which spoiler alert, maybe I should give everybody a warning right now, because when we get into this film, I don't think we can talk about it without giving away aspects of it. So there are going to be some spoilers. So if you want to see it and you want to be completely spoiler free, you may want to pause us here and come back after if you're really that interested in seeing the movie. But when he dies, I don't think that's him. I don't think that's him who gets shot. I think
no,
it's over the back. So yeah, it's kind of this fake Shemp phenomena. And again, the ADRs or the overdubbing, it's always kind of a game to see like how many times you can hear somebody that doesn't sound like Bruce Willis doing the overdubbing. That whoever's trying to do an impression of Bruce Willis, and it sometimes, like you say, that I sometimes with these movies, they're just like, you got to get this in at a certain time. I think going back to your Pups Alone podcast that you did with Alex Merkin, where Merkin said that they halted production of that film until they could get the principals back to shoot the scenes. And so the film started in 2017 and wasn't finished until now. I don't think any of these movies would ever be allowed to pull something like that. You got to get it all done in that quick period. So yeah, they cut corners, and you can see when the corners are cut.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I remember, it seems like a week doesn't go by where a new trailer for a new Bruce Willis movie doesn't come out. And I remember hearing about the one that he did called Fortress or whatever. I remember when that one, hearing that was going to start commencing filming just what seemed like a few months back. And the trailer for that is already out. And I think that's going to be dropping here in the next month or two or whatever on demand. I mean, you can't tell me. I almost kind of wonder with these films, I don't think there are really scripts in place. Right. To be perfectly honest, for them, I think, and I could be completely wrong. And if I am completely wrong, then I apologize now. But what it feels like to me is, okay, they have Bruce Willis on retainer, okay, for a certain number of days. Okay, we need to fill our quota and get our Bruce Willis movie shot. Okay, well, what can we do? And so I feel like these guys, EFO, so this is Emmett Furlow and I believe Oasis Productions. Okay, so what they do is they have Bruce Willis. They kind of finagle some things. They wrangle some other actors together, and I think they have a few script writers again on retainer. And they ask, okay, throw together whatever you can at the moment that is going to utilize what we have here, so in that way we can get our money back. I mean, and it almost feels like kind of like a dirty money laundering operation in a way. You know what I mean?
I mean, would you be surprised if we found out that that's what it was? That like one of the big like Washington Post or one of those like big newspapers, like one of us is just like looking through and we're like, oh my Lord, like this is like, all these Bruce Willis movies, it was a money laundering scheme, like launder cash. I mean, it's actually a great way to launder money if you think about it, because these movies tend to lose money, or they tend to barely make back what they're supposed to get. So yeah, if you throw $5 million of drug money into something like this, yeah, it's easy to kind of, there you go, there's our money. It's all through there. But yeah, I mean, the script part of it, this film in particular, with the writing credits, it has one writer and then it has the director as a writer as well. And it seems like whenever there's multiple writers on a film, that's always a sign that somebody wrote it and they thought the script was good enough, but let's fix it to make it. And who knows what the fix it was? The fix it might have been like, let's cut Bruce Willis's part down. Let's put him in one location. Who knows? Maybe they create the Daniel Bernhardt character so that his Hatchet Man. So Bruce Willis doesn't need to go anywhere. I don't know.
Well, and all this is a heist thriller, which is fine. I mean, that's a genre and a trope that we've seen duplicated numerous times. Okay. But what is unfortunate is they don't really add anything new to the heist thriller subgenre, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty much there after diamonds. Of course they are. And I mean, and it's pretty much just a matter of, okay, who's double crossing who? Claire Forlani comes in and she's very, very seductive. And of course, she's the femme fatale. So, is she double crossing Mark Paul Gosselaar's character? And it's not much of a surprise, spoiler alert, that she is, and so that's why I can't imagine. I mean, I really want to speak to these guys, but I can't imagine that there was a script floating around. Okay, Precious Cargo. It was a heist thriller with a suave young, Mark Paul Gosselaar-esque character who, liked to shoot golf balls out into the ocean or whatever, who gets roped into stealing diamonds, for a crime boss or whatever. And EFO saw the script and they said, yes, this would be perfect. Oh my God. We have Bruce Willis on retainer. Oh, you know what? Mark Paul Gosselaar, he's been knocking on our door. He needs a role. This sounds amazing. You know what I mean? I honestly feel like it was backwards. Okay. It was, hey, Bruce Willis is open for 3 days. Okay. Let's find whoever else we have is available. And hey, I didn't get the writer's name, but hey, can you throw together a script real quick that's going to utilize not just the stars, but the location that we have? That's honestly what it feels like was done here. And I think when you're going into it in that fashion, then you're losing any kind of excitement whatsoever,
Yeah, actually, actually, you make a great point, because I looked up the director, Max Adams, and he has only 4 director credits. So he's got, I guess there's a short called Precious Cargo that he directed that maybe is where this came from.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's actually where this came from. It came from the short. So he came up with this short initially, and then I guess he must have worked with somebody else to flesh it out. But the other thing that Max Adams is working on right now, he is credited with doing the rewrites to Expendable 4. He's doing the revisions on that screenplay. So this is the kind of guy this is. This is the, make this something work for us. There's a director that I had talked to. His name's Jay Horton, who now he does mostly like indie documentary stuff. But I had talked with him because he was indie horror director. He did film noir kind of things. And he was tasked with something similar, where they were like, here's this script that was originally going to be used for telenovela. Then it was going to be used for a Latin romance film here in America. We decided to turn it into more of a seductive thriller with an urban, more like an urban film. And we need you to fix it for us. And he's just like, okay, I'll do what I can. And there were some scenes in it that were really good, but when you hear that from him, that this is what I had to work with, I had to kind of take something that had been rewritten 4 times and make it into something for somebody because they want us to have something. Yeah, you wonder if like this, maybe Max Adams, that's kind of one of his gigs, right? Is that, take your it looks like he did script continuity stuff for Bumblebee as well. So he's kind of doing that kind of stuff. That just kind of let's fix these movies and make them work the way we want them to work. So yeah, I guess that's what, they had him doing here with Precious Cargo. So yeah, it's like he had this short film, and I guess they said, let's make it into a big movie, and we'll, like you said, we've got Bruce Willis, we've got Mark Paul Gosselaar. Let's just throw these names in here, and then the key thing, of course, is now when you're scrolling through Prime, you're scrolling through Tubi, wherever this is available, and you see these names, you say, oh yeah, I'm Mark Paul Gosselaar. I used to like Saved by the Bell. What's he up to? I haven't seen him in anything recently. Oh, Bruce Willis, of course. You got to love Bruce Willis. Let's check this out, and then you get into it, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of like it's almost kind of like those as seen on TV things that like they look fantastic. These little gadgets, they seem great, and then you buy them and get them home, and they don't really work the way that they did in the commercials.
Well, I think the business model that these guys have been using with Bruce Willis is actually almost fascinating in a lot of ways, and that's what I was kind of looking forward to talking with you about. Okay, so if I understand it correctly, and again, if I'm speaking out of turn, but this is what it feels like. Okay, and I feel like I'm about 99% accurate here with what they're doing. Is okay, they're saying, all right, we have a project here with Bruce Willis here. Okay, so obviously Willis is a guy, he's past his prime, but he is still marketable. Okay, we can still sell this package, this product overseas with his name on it. We can still market the film with his name. So that's what we are going to do. However, these are low budget films. Okay, so these films really can't afford Bruce Willis and his price tag for more than 2 to 3 days worth of work. Okay, so this is where the trickery comes in that we are seeing. Okay, this is where they're starting to pull the wool over our eyes here. Okay, and so basically what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, we are going to package it and we are going to sell it as a Bruce Willis movie. However, we, obviously he can't be in the film the entire time because he's only going to be on set for, so long. And plus he's going to be sitting half the time. So that's not that exciting. So what we need to do is we need to hire someone who can do the heavy lifting. We need to hire someone who can be the lead star, who is ostensibly going to be carrying the film. Okay. And then, so this is what they do. And so they're hiring basically young actors. Because if you look at all of these films, fronting all of these films is always the same type of MO. Okay. They're looking for a younger actor who is handsome. Okay. Who is also physically fit and can do, the physicality that the role may require. Hence why, okay, we are getting actors of the likes of, what's funny is they're basically going to like TV stars of the 90s and the early 2000s, basically. So if you look at the actors in these films, we're getting like Chad Michael Murray and Jesse Bradford and Jesse Metcalf. I think they did another one where Emile Hirsch showed up. They've done a few with Frank Grillo, who I think Frank Grillo deserves much, much better, but they're doing that. And then what's so hilarious is one of the more recent ones that is coming out, I think it's coming out here in the next couple weeks as of this recording. He has one called Deadlock, where Bruce Willis is the villain and he like takes hostage like a water dam or something like that. So who's the lead star in that one? But Patrick Muldoon. Like, where has Patrick Muldoon? But then again, this is a young actor, and the guy's like, Patrick Muldoon is like got to be in his early 50s or whatever. But I guess he can still do the physicality that the role will require. And so they're going to all these various young actors who can do the role, and I almost feel kind of bad for them, because it's kind of like, here these young guys, it's like they're being told, hey, this is your shot. This is your big shot to be leading a movie alongside Bruce Willis. But then you see the product and it's kind of like this isn't that good. But what's so funny about Precious Cargo, going back to this film, is it's almost it feels like they went down the list and they said, okay, well, Frank Grillo wasn't available, Thomas Jane wasn't available, Stephen Dorff wasn't available. Well, let's go to Mark Paul Gosselaar, which, try as he might, okay, I'm not going to discredit him or anything like that, because I think he is trying in this film, but he's always going to be Zach Morris. So there is just something so hilarious seeing Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell running around, firing pistols and, shouting F-bombs and everything. And it's like, dude, you can't live that down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I think, yeah, like you said about this, because I think like now we're seeing even younger actors, like Hayden Christensen and
there's another one, yep.
Right.
Who did First Kill. First Kill was one, yeah. And Kellen Lutz, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, and it's very different. So one of the things, I'm thinking of Alex Merkin, I had Mitch Lovell from Video Vacuum on here to talk about Altitude. And one of the things you notice about Altitude is that, in a sense, I think Dolph kind of, I don't want to say he doesn't take a back seat, but I think he kind of, in that role, he almost sort of like wants to let Denise Richards and Greer Grammer, Kelsey Grammer's daughter, he almost wants to let them shine and lead the film. Same thing with Acceleration with Natalie Byrne. It's almost like he wants to let her be the one that shine. But yet his part is never diminished. Like when Dolph Lundgren walks on that plane in Altitude, it's 100% pure Dolph Lundgren. It's just like all the attention always goes to him. But yet he does a good. Him having a diminished part in that film is not so much. Like, it doesn't feel like it's diminished. It feels like, or that he's mailing it in. It feels like, he's kind of just taking a step back so that other people can have the spotlight. That's not what Bruce Willis does in these movies. He's not like taking a step back so Mark Paul Gosselaar can have the spotlight. He's just like, I'm here. Give me $60,000 for 8 hours of work or whatever it is. And I think you're right with Mark Paul Gosselaar here that he's the most Mark Paul Gosselaar in like the opening sequence where he's kind of, like you said, he's chipping golf balls in the water. These guys come in. It's some kind of gun deal gone bad, because again, with these movies, you really can't have any kind of deal that goes well. They always have to go bad, whether it's drugs or guns or whatever is being sold and traded. But he kind of does it in a kind of an offbeat style, the way he does it. And that feels a little bit more like Zach Morris with the big chunky cell phone and the bum equipment, oversized sweatshirts, and that nice kind of blonde bleach, the kind of blonde surfer hair that he had on Saved by the Bell, who's, breaking the fourth wall to talk to us and all of that. That feels more like Mark Paul Gosselaar. When he's like mean mugging it and being like, oh man, we got to get this guy, we got to do this, whatever. And he's like mad at Claire Forlani because he thinks that she sold them out and all this stuff. That does, I agree with you completely. That doesn't work. The fight scenes, they were interesting, but yeah, Mark Paul Gosselaar, where he works is in sort of more of that offbeat space, which I think this movie was trying to do, but it's hard to do offbeat at this kind of level.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, and going back to what I said earlier, I can't imagine when they were putting this film together, they said, oh my goodness, Mark Paul Gosselaar would be perfect for this role. Let's get him. I have to believe, that they went through their Rolodex of, again, fairly, relatively younger, handsome actors who can handle physicality that the role would require. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went down the list and they said, oh, Chad Michael Murray, nope, he's doing a One Tree Hill reunion or something like that. And, and they just said, oh, well, wait a minute, Mark Paul Gosselaar is available. Okay, let's do it. Because these roles, kind of like the titles that all these films have, but these roles are so interchangeable. That's the other thing about these characters is we're not given any real characterization to them at all. All we're really told about Mark Paul Gosselaar's character is, yes, he's a thief who likes to golf, but we're never told why he's hanging out with this sniper chick, how they got to get to know each other, how he knows the other crew that's in the film, why Bruce Willis is bad, why he's a crime lord. It's none of that. It all feels so superficial and, again, disposable. I honestly feel like these films are they're cranked out on an assembly line, to generate that money and almost to fulfill a quota. Okay, we made four movies this year, to kind of, net those sales. And next year we have an additional 5 lined up. It's really, on one hand, it's a business, so I understand it. But on the other hand, it's like, man, back in the day, the guys who I looked up to, Van Damme, he would do 1 movie a year. Seagal would do about 1 movie a year. Bruce Willis, 1 movie a year. And then you see Willis now cranking out like 10 movies a year. And look, and going back to my show, Dolph is really, I'd like to think he's a little bit different. He has a little bit better standards, but there's been years where he has 5 or 6 movies in the can. Okay. These films, they are just done so cheaply nowadays that, I think to sustain the lifestyles that these guys are used to, they have to, take on more roles in these shoddy productions because the money and the value is just not there like it was back in 1999.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like what you're talking about with the, kind of going down the list. I wonder if there's almost like I think when you were talking about on a previous podcast episode, you're talking about In the Name of the King. And I think it was In the Name of the King too, where I think Uwe Boll, like his whole approach was go to an agent and find out who had like a couple weeks between pictures that wanted to make a little extra money. I wonder if it's a similar thing here, where it's like, okay, who do you have available? And it's like, well, okay, you go down the list, and these 3 guys aren't available. Mark Paul Gosselaar is. The agent maybe represents all of them, and it's like, okay,
they're throwing darts at agencies. That's exactly what I feel like they're doing. And what's so funny is, Uwe Boll. He, and look, I actually admire a lot of what Uwe Boll does because I feel like in a lot of ways he saw the writing on the wall for what was going on here. And what's funny is he got a ton of crap and a ton of criticism for the way that he made movies, when in reality, think about it, how many directors and how many studios are following the Uwe Boll method of directing films, where, he goes out to various casting agencies and says who's available. And if you look at a lot of his films, it's like, really, Edward Furlong, was he really the best choice for some of these roles? And Tara Reid? But it's like, look, that person, was a name or is a name, however you want to say it, and was available, and they can get that person at cost, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like, and it has almost like kind of become this funny thing, right? With Tara Reid as an anthropologist, or some of these things that have happened after the fact with his movies, that it in a way Uwe Boll kind of transcended it. But I think you're right too, that in a way he also. He almost, I don't know if he pioneered this kind of film, because I mean, one of the funny things about him, right, was that he was getting these huge tax credits in Germany to make his movies, and that was not what those tax credits were intended for. They were supposed to be like sort of furthering the art of filmmaking, and he was getting like millions of dollars to make In the Name of the King and stuff like that. But with these movies, it is almost like, it's like, let's get it done in a short period. I mean, like you talked about with the lack of background. I mean, Mark Paul Gosselaar, we don't know anything about his background. And like you said, he knows a couple of, right.
That's it. He's a thief.
Right. And we think maybe he's ex-military because he knows a couple of military guys and he seems to know them from something and they're military guys. So maybe, but we don't hear that. Right. I mean, like how much would it have taken to throw in a throwaway line that says that, Mark Paul Gosselaar and then the character, Jenna B. Kelly's character of Logan, the sniper, that they just served together in Iraq or something like that. It would have been a throwaway line, but at least we would have gotten some exposition. It's just kind of all just sort of there. And it is one of those things where it's like, these movies, I think they kind of, it's sort of like, let's pump it out and play on the fact that, Bruce Willis is on the cover, and I wonder to what extent it works. I mean, the other thing too, I think that kind of comes up too, is this sort of this law of diminishing returns, where I remember the podcast, I think every time I have you on, I kind of go back to this episode where you had a producer Benjamin Sachs on, but I remember he talked about how Steven Seagal would come to him, to production companies and say, I need another movie. I need to get another movie. And it's like, I'm doing 3 of these Seagal movies a year, and now people aren't buying as many of them, right? Because it's like, okay, if I'm going to the streaming service and I see 3 Seagal movies that are all from the same year, I really can't consume them all. I can only, I'm only going to watch one of those 3 probably. And I wonder if with Bruce Willis, if it's going to be the same thing, where it's just like, I don't know if maybe they need to load the cast up with other people. Like, I mean, one thing that's interesting about this one is it does have Mark Paul Gosselaar, also has Claire Forlani, which people probably know from Mallrats. So maybe it's a little bit better, but I think there is maybe going to be a point where these companies probably just say, you know what, is it worth it? Can that $60,000 be spent better somewhere else?
Yeah, no. I mean, and the other thing that's really kind of just grotesque about this entire thing, and I mean, I actually, as of this recording, I haven't released it yet, but my next upcoming episode is I looked at 3 films that Dolph Lundgren did back in 2013, 2014 or so with director Giorgio Serafini. So Dolph did something quite similar. He did 3 movies, Blood of Redemption, Ambushed, and Puncture Wounds. And those films are all fairly similar to what we have going on here, to where, okay, Dolph is, the biggest name in the film, but he's also going to be taken back seat to someone, younger, who's going to, be able to kind of do the heavy lifting and carry the film. You know what I mean? And so those films all just have a cheapness to them. Like when you watch those particular films, you can tell that, they were not made with a heck of a lot of budget. You can tell that they were filmed digitally because, the quality just kind of looks cheap and everything. But what's also interesting about these films, and that's the only reason I bring it up, is just the portrayal of women in the film. It almost feels like these movies were written by 19, 20-year-olds who, because there's a scene in the film that serves absolutely no purpose, and it just comes off as just kind of gross, and fairly misogynistic, but it's where Daniel Bernhardt arrives at the hotel to talk to Bruce Willis, and for no reason whatsoever is a bunch of hot blondes are hanging out by the pool in bikinis, and Daniel Bernhardt just starts demeaning them in a pretty grotesque monologue, that it comes off as just kind of offensive, and it just sticks out, and it's kind of like, well, this seems out of place and just wrong. And And I don't know if you noticed that either, but it felt really out of place. And it's kind of like, look, I realize that these movies are most likely written towards and, they're geared towards men. You know what I mean? They're going to be their audience. But, I don't think, I mean, give us a little bit more credit, don't you think? Like,
yeah, I mean, the thing I think with that scene is I think they would try to hedge what they did with that scene. 'Cause I totally agree with you. That scene kind of made me uncomfortable too, where he's just going on this like chauvinistic diatribe where he, like you said, he's demeaning one woman in particular, but the whole group of women. But I think they would try to excuse it by saying, well, he was the bad guy, so that's why he's a jerk. But it's like, no, that was kind of played for laughs. That was supposed to make us kind of laugh there, and it didn't work. And the other thing too, of course, is the reason why he's demeaning these women is he's asking them where Bruce Willis's character is, and they're like, they didn't respond to him right away, and so then he's got to do that, which made no sense either because we all know where Bruce Willis's character was. He wasn't anywhere else other than in that hotel room. He wasn't going to be anywhere else. So it's like we're going through this whole process of he's got to go up there. And then the other funny thing, right, is that the next scene that we see is when that person that Claire Forlani, that this guy in Bruce Willis's gang who's been giving away the jobs that they've been doing to Claire Forlani, so she gets the drop on them and does the jobs before him. The next scene we see is this guy in that room, like in front of a chessboard, where we get like kind of this pedantic, banal dialogue where we're trying to, where it's all these metaphors and philosophy about how chess is and all these things that all these movies do that it just doesn't really work either. But it's like, oh, why is this guy here? How do we know that this guy got here? It's like one minute Daniel Bernhard's at the pool, the next minute he's up in the room and there's this guy sitting there with Daniel Bernhard and Bruce Willis. So that's the other thing too, is like these things can just happen that we don't know how they get there or any of that stuff.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. And, what's also interesting here is, I mean, if you want to compare this to, the action films that you and I grew up with, in those various action sequences, those chase sequences in those films, there felt a certain level of danger and a certain, level of threat. Okay. Because again, we are given characters in those films that we care about. I mean, I know it's a little unfair to compare this to something like Lethal Weapon, if you will. Actually, well, better yet, we can compare this to something like Heat, okay? Because Heat is a heist thriller, if you will, okay? But in something like that, you have characters who are given more dimension to them. You have characters who have much more depth to them. So when they're in those chase sequences, if you will, you really care about what's going on. And yeah, you have a feeling, okay, yeah, that the bad guy may get away or that the good guy may prevail. But I mean, there's something there that's kind of keeping you invested. Here, because the characters are so one-dimensional and throwaway, I mean, they almost feel like just, standard archetypes, if you will. In that speedboat chase sequence, it's kind of like, I started tuning out. And I feel bad saying that because I imagine the stunt people in that scene were working pretty hard. Okay. I imagine the editor editing it had to, put in a little bit of overtime. But it's kind of like, look, if you're not going to give us more with the characters other than, okay, Bruce Willis is a crime boss and Mark Paul Gosselaar is an expert thief, and that's it. You know what I mean? And then we get the scene where he's recruiting. That's the other thing too, Matt, that that just bothered me. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be going off in different directions, but in the scene where he's recruiting his team, that should be a really cool scene where we get some backstory on, oh, this was a guy who I served with back in Iraq. He's a little kooky, just so you know, but he's good at what he does. But then when we see these various characters, it's so ridiculous. I mean, the level of dialogue that we are given here, and characterization for that matter, is that one of the characters pisses the bed.
Right, he's
like that.
He threw up on the bar,
that is what
too.
we get. That is what we get. That is the level. Is that he urinated the bed. There's some other questionable lines of dialogue too that's supposed to be flirtatious about, we like to do things amorous in the bed with the light on, but I mean, obviously I said it a little bit more poetic and politically correct than they did, but it's just kind of like, come on. Is this the tasteless level of screenwriting that we're at here too?
Well, right, and getting back to that chauvinistic element, right? Both of the guys that they pick up. So, like you said, the first guy, right? He vomits on the bar, and then his girlfriend, I think, or his wife or whoever, shows up at the bar with the sheets that he apparently wet when he wet the bed because he's such a drunk. It's
because that's hilarious.
Right.
I'm sorry, but isn't that funny that a 30-something, 40-year-old man pisses the bed?
Right.
Like
right.
I guess we're supposed to laugh at that.
Yes, it's like under the Fozzie Bear, waka waka waka, kind of thing.
I mean, come on, like.
Yeah, but then it also has that tinge of the nagging wife, right, in there, that this guy's got to get away from his nagging wife. And then or maybe not nagging wife, but I guess because I think maybe he's a philanderer, maybe it's just another woman or something.
But the other guy has the nagging wife.
Right, and again, it's like the psycho woman like trope, right? She puts his phone in the blender when she's making a mixed drink at this bar thing that she's at. She's talking about how she's going to go urinate on his laptop. So another urination joke we have as well there. And so again, it's sort of these chauvinistic tropes here. And again, the one woman, right, the sniper Logan, she's kind of almost more masculine. She has a name that could go either be either male or female. It's kind of like the reverse of when you think of Point Break with Lori Petty's character of Taylor or Tyler, where
I was thinking that too. Yeah, but you know what? Lori Petty's character feels real, okay,
right.
because she is a tomboy with a pretty wacky haircut, we will say, for the time, 1991. I mean, and she is believable as being this surfer. You look at the cast of people who Mark Paul Gosselaar assembles when he's, okay, I have this mission, I have this job, I need a team, and they all look like they all stepped out of an Abercrombie and Fitch like catalog. I mean, they all look so, and I mean, look, I'm not saying you can't have actors that are attractive. I mean, we've been seeing this, in our action movies for a while, but it doesn't feel real in any kind of way. And the one actor who gets his phone put in the blender, I was looking at him. This is very sad that I know this, but I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, okay, I've seen this guy before. He's played a doofus before in a sitcom. What has he played a doofus in? Where have I seen this guy? And so I had to go on IMDb, and he was the love interest in that Fuller House reboot.
I saw that. Yes, it's the first thing that comes up. Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that's the level of casting we have. They are literally going to heartthrobs from TV for this violent, foul-mouthed action movie. It's like, what are they doing?
Right. And I think too, when you think kind of like like Point Break with Lori Petty's character, she's almost kind of like a metaphor for Catherine Bigelow trying to sort of make it in sort of the male-dominated action directing world, where she's kind of like this idea, because the way she makes Point Break, she doesn't really make it as a woman trying to be a man. She kind of just makes it as like a woman sort of seeing these men as kind of objects, the way men see women as objects in action films. But the Tyler character, right, she's trying to be one of the guys, and yet at the end of the movie she's just another damsel in distress. Like she's just sort of reduced to that, which is kind of her way, Catherine Bigelow's way of saying, like, you can try to play with the guys, you can try to do it the way the guys do it, but ultimately you're just going to be another chick, to them. And that's kind of what this movie is too, right? It's kind of like the chicks are just, other than the sniper woman she still gets, injured. She gets shot and she has to come back, but at least she's kind of like the saving the day one. So, but there is still this sense of like, right, that there's sort of this chauvinistic element that Claire Forlani's character, who is like the woman who like kind of scorns him, Mark, but then comes back and he can't quite quit her or something like that. You wonder too with the writer, if maybe there was a lover that did the same thing and he wished he could have quit her, and he's writing this character into it. There are a lot of those elements, and I mean when you look at the cast, like you were saying, I recognize Daniel Bernhardt. Obviously Bruce Willis, his headshot is like from being in a red carpet event or something like that. But a lot of them are these airbrushed headshots that are just like these, not necessarily like 80s glamour photos, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like this idea, like they all kind of look the same. And you're right that they're interchangeable. I mean, if you click on any of these actors or actresses, usually you see a few of these Bruce Willis movies that pop up that they've been in as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, it's again, EFO, they have a Rolodex, I feel, of, interchangeable actors for these films. And as long as they, hit that, as long as they have that MO of, being attractive, being relatively physically fit, and, is okay with being the lead in this film, but, hey, Bruce Willis is also in it, so he's going to get his face is going to take up most of the box. I think they're okay with that. I will say regarding Mark Paul Gosselaar, we kind of joked about him as Zach Morris, and it's it's kind of unfortunate he is forever going to be Zach Morris. I will say the dude has aged well. Considering I think I read that he was born in 1974. But man, yeah. He's aged, pretty good considering. And, it's just kind of unfortunate that he has, I feel like when he signed on for this as being the lead in this action movie, he pretty much had two things going against him. Number one is the fact that he's in a Bruce Willis movie. That right there is not going to help him out, especially at this stage in Bruce's career. And also the fact that he has that sitcom that he did for so many years that he's forever going to be known for. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you took the Fonz and you put the Fonz in a role and you want to try and take him serious. It's not going to work entirely. And that's why one of the things I love about that show on HBO, Barry, is that Henry Winkler is in it, but he's still playing kind of a goofball, if you will, to an extent. So it works there.
Yeah, I think right, like Mark Paul Gosselaar. I haven't really seen the show, but I know he has the new that new sitcom Mixed-ish that's based off of Blackish. I think it's a spin-off of Blackish. I think that's probably a better fit for him, right? That he can kind of just be offbeat, have fun. 23 minutes. The script kind of fits what he's used to. I think it kind of works a little bit better for what he does. I think he tried with this. I think he definitely puts in a performance here and he tries to make it work. I think the problem is that sort of everything that's around. There's that scene where they're on the boat, that chase scene on the boat where there's supposed to be like this sort of offbeat, funny dialogue happening between all of them on the boat while things are happening. And it just kind of felt like very kind of like, post Pulp Fiction derivative kind of thing where it's just like, let's throw as much irony as we can into these scenes and see how much everybody likes it. And so I think those are things we can't blame Mark Paul Gosselaar for, but I think you're right. I think it's easier, I think, in a sitcom to watch Mark Paul Gosselaar and say, okay, I remember him from Saved by the Bell, but this is a new thing that he's doing, and it still kind of works. Whereas this movie, it's like, yeah, you're just like, Zach Morris, like, when is he going to pull out the big chunky phone and start talking to somebody?
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said earlier, which is really unfortunate. Is all this would have taken is just a few lines of dialogue of, hey, we were in the special forces together, but we were honorably discharged or something like that. And then when we get that recruiting scene where they're, trying to assemble a team, oh, this is someone here who helped on that one job in Beirut or, whatever it may be. But, it's almost like we're not given any of that. And maybe, you said that this was apparently a short film. Maybe some of that was in that short film. I don't really know, but yeah, I think in the end, if we look at the ending real quick, with the way Bruce Willis dies, just the way his character is offed is just so lackluster that you almost kind of wonder if the production was just kind of petering out at a certain point and was just trying to, not saying that they shot this entire thing chronologically in order, but you almost feel like they just kind of wanted to quickly end it, get it in the can, and move on to their next production, their next title.
Yeah, because you feel like Bruce Willis's character, it seems like he's been a crime boss for a long time, and the fact that he leaves himself open for a sniper to hit him in the back.
You telling me that he didn't? Come on. Yeah, he left himself wide open. Yeah. To where it was, and you saw him when he was in that parking garage earlier. He had a ton of bodyguards with him, and he kept himself relatively enclosed. And the way he kept himself so open in that final scene, it was almost kind of like, I wonder if Bruce Willis wasn't there that day and they figured, what's the best way we can do this with our stunt double? But, it's one of those things where it's like, come on, guys, try a little bit harder here. Or if anything, film that scene on his first day on set or something.
No, I wonder, you might be right about that, because it'd be interesting to go back and watch it and see if like there's something about those scenes where they show his face in those scenes. If maybe we could like pinpoint another scene in the film that he was shooting that they just recycled for that. I mean, you wonder too. You never know like how much footage doesn't get used in a movie that can be recycled for those purposes. I mean, one of the things I think, one of the unsung heroes of these kinds of movies is the editor. The way that these editors can do some of these. I mean, again, also from a director standpoint, I mean, we always joke that Keone Waxman is like the Seagal whisperer, because the way he's able to, kind of the same way, Benjamin Sachs talks about working with Seagal. It seems like Keone Waxman just knows what Seagal wants from a movie and just does whatever he's got to do. And I imagine in those cases, probably is a little bit easier for the editor and for everybody else involved, because it's just like Keone Waxman gets it. You wonder if maybe that's kind of start happening with Bruce Willis, that like certain directors just know, like, this is how we got to do it with Bruce. We got to just get these scenes in, get them done, and we'll finish it off in post. We'll get whatever we get in post.
Yeah, I exactly. I mean, and just the way, I mean, it's funny because the way, so Bruce Willis gets, sniped right through the back, bullet goes right through the chest, and just the way he falls to the ground dead. I mean, they do it in slow motion and everything. It's Bruce Willis falling, but you can tell that either he wasn't entirely there that day, or maybe they took some footage and they, digitally kind of remastered it and reverse angled it to make it. I mean, but just the way he falls to the ground is so, pathetically shot. And so, yeah, I kind of wonder if maybe they reused it. I mean, there's a wonderful, you should check it out. It's on YouTube. It's pretty funny, actually. But John Candy's last movie, Wagons East.
Oh, yes,
I don't know if you ever saw, yeah. So if you watch it, because John Candy died during production, they had to finish the film. But there are a couple scenes, and you can find them on YouTube, where they recycled shots. They recycled scenes, and one of the most famous ones is him at a bar, and he's putting down a beer bottle, or he's putting down a whiskey bottle or whatever. And so they recycled that in the film multiple times. And so considering the state of Bruce and where he's at, I think I wouldn't be surprised if these guys at EFO, if they're recycling scenes of Bruce in other movies, in fact. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not putting it past them that 10 minutes gone, we see a shot of him in Precious Cargo, and they just digitally changed his suit color or something,
Yeah, you made a really great point. Think of like PM Entertainment, who they use like recycled footage of helicopters exploding or police cars flipping over, or those kinds of things. So it makes you wonder. I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to go back. I mean, because if you think about it, there's a lot of things that are the same about these movies. The suits tend to be the same. He tends to always have like these the sport coat with no tie, or maybe a sport coat. So like there's a lot of times where he's wearing a similar outfit. It wouldn't take much to make it happen. Somebody made this montage of pictures of him in recent films where he's tied to chairs. And I guess that's a new thing. Like, his character is always tied to a chair, which, if you're Bruce Willis, I mean, that can't be horrible, right? Because again, you're just sitting. He probably just has to put his hands behind the seat back too. He probably, it's not like there's any kind of, difficulty involved with that. So it's, again, similar thing, right? If all these movies have that, it's very possible that they're recycling the footage, which, is great for Bruce Willis. Cause I imagine he's got the SAG card. So they can't use his likeness without him getting paid a certain amount of money. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the number is. I mean, I'm saying $60,000 for a day's worth of work. Maybe it's more. I don't know.
I don't know either. But in the end, I mean, thank you for because I feel like this is a trend that I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know how many other podcasts have been looking at it, but this is a trend that really needs to be looked at in terms of the direct-to-video market. I mean, the budgets just aren't there that much anymore. The DVD and Blu-ray market has shrunk considerably, and so now a lot of these films are thrown onto the streaming services. So when you're going into it with that mindset already, of course the films, the products that we're going to be seeing are going to be of a cheaper quality. Having said all that, though, if this is what we're getting from Bruce, I'm okay not seeing another film, because I know what it is, and I almost feel like what needs to happen is there needs to be a mutiny of some kind, or a revolution of some kind, where fans, okay, if you will, or consumers, we just need to stop. Okay, because I mean, obviously these films are generated, the budgets are generated from the foreign sales, but I mean, obviously they're also getting sales from, what few consumers, and I feel like the results just are not that good. We just need to stop. Okay, I honestly wonder if as consumers we quit paying the money to rent these, or we quit paying the money to stream them on these services or anything like that. If maybe eventually EFO will see that there's not much of a market for Bruce Willis anymore, and we can be spared any more of this. But I have not seen anything that has come out of that company that has been worth noting. So my PSA for everyone will be, if you see EFO in front of any of these films, you need to avoid it. The trailer may look good, but the result is just going to be slop. So
Yeah, Grindstone is another one. They, whenever you see, I mean, it's funny when we talk about these names, because, you think about like in the 80s and 90s, it was like, you see Canon across the front, you're like, oh, this is going to be good, or, PM Entertainment or Vestron Video, and even things like Imperial, I'm trying to think of some of the other great ones. But you'd see those logos flash across the screen, and you'd be like, yeah, this is going to be kind of some fun, like low budget cheese that I'm about to enjoy here.
Yeah.
And now it's like you're seeing these ones like Grindstone, Accelerator. What I know Seagal has his own. That's like I can't remember the name of it. I think it's got like a sword or something. It's the logo for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, EFO film. I mean, you see these and you're just like, oh boy, here we go. I'm in for another one of these ones.
Yeah.
And and I think you're right. I think there does maybe, I know my site is one that tends to I tend to gravitate towards movies that have names in them to review, because, those are the ones that people tend to, oh, Matt reviewed that one with I want to see what he has to say about Bruce Willis. Let's see what he, and I'll probably end up reviewing this one for the site, because I usually do after I do the podcast. Like I usually, a month or so later, I'll review the film just to kind of maybe try to get a little bit of a boomerang effect on the podcast episode. Kind of give it a secondary bump. So I probably will be reviewing this, but I think you're right. I think there has to come a point where, not only do we kind of stop watching, but maybe even from a review site standpoint too, that we, I stop, talking about Bruce Willis movies. And I mean, because all the big ones will do it. Like anytime there's a Bruce Willis movie that comes out, you'll see like the kind of the bigger ones, they get screeners and they're just like, hey, Bruce Willis is in this new movie, and it's just Bruce Willis's bald head, open dress shirt, no tie, sport coat. There he is. And I wonder if that's what it's going to have to take, because I agree with you. I think, kind of getting back to the state of direct to video, I think you were talking about this a little bit with Dolph Lundgren. I think one of the things you were talking about with me, because I'm kind of the I'll talk any Dolph anytime. So I think some of those movies he did in the 2010s that weren't so hot. You were talking about maybe struggling to find people to want to talk about some of those movies. But it kind of there's something around 2010 where the direct to video industry in general just starts to kind of take a bit of a nosedive, and you just aren't seeing a lot. You're seeing more precious cargoes than you're seeing, name a good one like Altitude that I thought was good or I enjoyed, or some of those other ones that were a little bit better. Yeah.
I mean, it's a sad kind of state of affairs, I guess we can say, but then again, you have these stars who, like we keep saying, are past their prime, and you have these companies that really aren't working with much in terms of budgets. And then again, if the consumer audience, this is something I echoed on my recent recording. But I mean, if the consumer audience, okay, is pretty much going to be watching these films, but saying, I will wait for that to pop up on Netflix, or
Right.
I'll wait for it to be free. Okay. Well, then that right there is not giving them much to work with, because, which, like I said, no way would I have paid $6.99 to watch this.
Right,
Okay.
no.
But then again, I mean, if I'm glad that it's free, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, look, I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but on the other hand, like, I'm not going to be paying anything to watch this if this is what the quality is going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing for me too is because there's so much that's available streaming. Like, you take a guy like Scott Adkins, who's like really, really getting after it right now with action stuff, and he's in a lot of really great things. His movie that he did recently with Mario Van Peebles, Seized, is now available on Netflix, and it was originally only available for rent. Now, my take on it was, well, there's so many Scott Adkins movies that are available for free that I haven't seen yet. I feel like I should watch those first before I pay to rent one of those. On the other hand, like, Dolph is one that I have paid to rent. I think actually his three most recent ones, I think Acceleration I got on Hoopla, but I did pay for Hard Night Falling, and I think I may have paid for Tracker. I can't remember. So I have shelled out the money for the Dolph ones, just because, and who knows, Pups Alone I might do the same. If it's $3 to rent, I might, just to, with the new Dolph ones I will. So I guess there are some that I will pay to rent. But the other thing too is I've seen all the Dolph ones, so there's not like I have any catching up to do with Dolph movies.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, look, I feel like this is important information. We need to let the public know that, we need to stop. We need to stop giving EFO our money. We need to stop giving Bruce Willis our money. If we want him to go back to doing something, I think, where he truly cares, then we just need to stop with this and have him wait for something good to come out. I mean, I feel like the last thing I saw where he seemed somewhat alive and like he gave a damn was Death Wish, but even that wasn't stellar. And to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of surprised that one even got a theatrical release. But in any case, but no, I really do appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for letting me. I feel like in the end, I feel like all I did was vent, and I feel bad. I feel like I was totally negative, and all I did was vent. But I mean, come on. I mean, these dudes are. It's a money line. It doesn't even feel like a movie production studio. I mean, that's what's sad. I mean, I joked that it was money laundering. I don't know, but it doesn't even feel like they're. What's sad about it is it doesn't feel like their intent is to make good movies, and I think that's what's sad. I mean, you mentioned Canon earlier, but Canon Films. That was a company who, they had some questionable material, but that was two cousins, that was two guys who honestly were trying to make really good movies. And I think the editors on these things are working hard. I think the actors, depending on the day, maybe they're invested, but I don't think Emmett Furlaw and Oasis are really invested in making good products.
No, I think you're right. And I think you make a great point with like Canon PM. I mean, PM, there's sort of this crass understanding or this crass mindset with them that like, oh, it's just like, just throw cars, flip cars and blow up helicopters and just, throw everything together. But, the one thing that PM did was that they had an action sequence every 10 minutes or so in their movies, and they were good action sequences. I mean, you look at the action sequences here, you get some explosions, but I mean, that initial boat chase scene, it's really just like people shooting at each other and not hitting anything. That's not really action to me. People shooting at each other and not hitting anything. It's like, what's the point? All you're doing is just extending this thing out until finally somebody, the movie decides that somebody gets hit with a bullet and they fall off the boat or they fall, And like you said, there's stuntmen who are really risking, their life, or they're risking their health on these scenes, right? Flying off the jet skis, flying off moving boats, and all of that kind of thing. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying the scene is not, being adequately, portrayed. It's just that. It's kind of padding in that sense where it's just people, it's like we just need to make this boat scene last a certain amount of time. and then we'll just decide when it's over. That's when it's over. And
Mm-hmm.
When a movie does that kind of thing, I don't know, it just doesn't, it's like you said, it's almost cynical in a way that it's just like, let's just put these people on the boats and like have them shoot at each other. And, eventually the bullets will do something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Matt, it's been a ton of fun, and I'm going to hold you to it, man, because I'm at a period now in Lundgren's filmography where there are a few diamonds in the rough, but there's some questionable ones that are kind of similar, actually, in terms of tone and taste as this one. So I may be calling upon you, or maybe more or less I may be begging you, I guess, to join me if you're willing. So
no, I like I said, I mean, I did Final Inquiry, so I feel like if I've done Final Inquiry, you know that I can do any of them. The one that I disliked the most was Ambushed. I think that was the one, because that one was what, when I think of bait and switches, like, Bruce Willis being on the cover, but he's barely in the movie, it's a bait and switch. But Ambushed had a trailer bait and switch, where the trailer made it sound like it was going to be this really great, like, mano-a-mano thing between Dolph Lundgren and this drug dealer played by Randy the Natural Couture. And instead it's like some, like, jackass guy, like, who's, and those two are, like, off in the periphery. And I was just so mad that I didn't get that movie that I just, that one to me always will kind of go down as as the worst Dolph Lundgren movie for me.
Well, I will say that episode will be dropping in early September or so. I called it the Serafini trifecta. So
Excellent.
that episode will be dropping. I don't know when this one will be coming out, but stay tuned on my feed. But we're going to be looking. It's going to be it's a 90-minute conversation. We knock them all out: Ambushed, Blood of Redemption, and Puncture Wounds, all in one shot.
Excellent. I can't wait. So yeah. While we're wrapping up here, Sean, if you want to tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, if you are interested in hearing more of my ramblings and musings, I guess, I look at the films of Dolph Lundgren, and we go in chronological order. Me and a special guest each episode take one of Mr. Lundgren's films, and we pick it apart and just overall give it a review, I guess. And in between the episodes, I've been fortunate. We have some interview episodes where I've gotten to talk with directors and screenwriters and stunt performers and everybody in between who has worked alongside Mr. Lundgren on these films. So check it out. It's called I Must Break This Podcast.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think everybody out there, you should like and subscribe. It is like I mean, I love the conversations about the films. I think the one that I really enjoyed, I think, was when you did the Universal Soldier ones. Those two John Hyams DTV sequels were really great. But I love too the conversations with people in the industry, because it seems like when they start talking, like, they really give some real gems about real gems about how these kinds of movies are made, that kind of gives us a nice perspective on these, that we're not just watching them, but we kind of, the people who are making them kind of tell us some of the challenges they face, and but also some of the good things about it as well.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's a ton of fun. It got off to a bit of a rocky start. It's funny, as I look at some of the early episodes, and anybody who goes back and listens in it chronologically, I do apologize. I feel like it took me a bit to find my footing. I think all podcasts do that as well. But now that I've found my footing, I splice in trailers and clips from the movie and things of that nature, and it's a ton of fun. So.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's funny. I'm kind of the same with my podcast. I have early episodes. I mean, one of the things too is TalkShoe had a server crash, and I lost like the first I don't know how many of my episodes. I have them on my computer somewhere. I've got to just upload them again on there. So some of my old ones, I don't even have them anymore right now. They're not available. So I know what you mean. Kind of sort of getting the hang of this kind of thing.
I have a couple episodes too where the joys of editing really hadn't struck with me just yet, and so there's a lot of ums and knows, and on one of my episodes, it's my Universal Soldier episode as well. Midway through the conversation, it sounds like I keep cutting my guest off. And that's not the intent at all. At the time, I didn't really know how to fix that. So, but it's trial and error, and it's, in the end, it's fun. So,
Eventually we kind of get the hang of these kinds of things. The other thing too is we're not like Joe Rogan. We're not getting paid $150 million to do the podcast. So we gotta find the way to do it with the resources we have and the time we have available.
If I got paid $150 million, I would create my own production studio and try and make better films than EFO. I'll tell you that much.
Yes. Well, this one was 10 million, so you'd be able to make 15 of these.
No, you know what? No, I'm gonna do 2. If I can at least do 2 solid films, that's better than the crap that these guys do. So.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a perfect note to leave it on. So thank you again, Sean, for coming on. This was a great conversation. I think we kind of birthed the idea for this. I think when I was on. When we were talking about Expendables, and I think Bruce Willis came up, and then I think you had found a Vice article about kind of the turn that his movies had taken, and we thought, why don't we just do a Bruce Willis movie and talk about that?
Yeah. No, this has been a ton of fun. So, so thank you, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. And thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back soon as well. Bye, everyone.
Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.